big hello and a very warm welcome to Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. Today on the show, it's all about the Effies. We meet the champions and bring to you their winning mantras. For the first time, a glamorous evening, innumerable awards and the who's who of advertising and marketing came together virtually to marvel at the creative excellence seen in advertising for the year gone by. Effies 2021 was all that it promised and more as it lauded the brands and campaigns, agencies and clients that strived and successfully created effective communication with their consumers during a rather tough year. We bring you the round report from the Effies 2021 while walking you through the biggest winners from the award gala and getting you their winning mantra, all from the champions themselves.
Awards galore, competitive spirit, and the celebration of creative brilliance in the world of advertising. The 20th edition of the Effies had it all. The award ceremony aimed at lauding the efforts of creative agencies and brands that have achieved business objectives through impactful communication with their customers, especially the viewers. The only difference being that the entire ceremony this time round was virtual thanks to the ongoing pandemic. Talking about participation, the Ad Club received over 950 entries and saw participation from 51 agencies. Well, let's move on to the big winners, and we must start off by talking about the coveted Numero Uno award of the evening, the Agency of the Year award. And that, for the fourth straight year, went to none other than the McCann Worldgroup, taking home 1 gold, 9 silvers and 20 bronzes with a remarkable tally of 280 points. McCann also won gold in the influencer marketing category for its Dettol campaign using virality to fight the virus.
Wash it. मैसेज देना है टू वन एंड ऑल 20 सेकंड तक करना डेटॉल हाथों को अपने साबुन से धोना छूटे नहीं कोई भी कोना आगे से पीछे से ऊपर से नीचे से लेफ्ट राइट जीतेंगे ये फाइट हाथों को अपने साबुन से धोना छूटे नहीं कोई भी कोना.
Coming to the most coveted honor of the evening, the Client of the Year award was bagged by none other than Hindustan Unilever with a total of 88 points and breaking its own record from last year, bagging a total of 10 medals. 4 gold, 3 silver and 3 bronzes. Some of the most successful creatives of the brand were H for hand washing and Use Any Soap, both being released during the pandemic to promote hand washing by Lifebuoy. The Grand Effie was won by Ogilvy and contributing agency Wavemaker India for Cadbury Dairy Milk's campaign Melting Power Distance under the integrated advertising category. Well, it can safely be said that the Effies 2021 was truly an evening to remember for the creators of the advertising brilliance on screen. Here's hoping the Effies 2022 turns out to be a lot more competitive, with viewers and consumers feasting on a lot more impactful brand communication.
Well, it's time to talk to the Client of the Year and find out how they did it yet again. Joining me right here on the show is Priya Nair, Executive Director, Beauty and Personal Care for Hindustan Unilever and Executive Vice President, Beauty and Personal Care, Unilever South Asia. Truly a pleasure having you on Brand Equity, Priya.
Thanks so much, Sonali. Always a pleasure to join the Brand Equity.
To flash back to the past year, we all know how difficult and challenging it was, and given that most of us have gone through such dark phases. As one of the leading marketers, who's also experiencing, what we're going through for the first time, how difficult was it to communicate and advertise during these very strange times?
So, what you would do traditionally in terms of media strategies, you had to shift, you had to actually do things differently. So absolutely, that's absolutely what we had to do. But let me give you an example of, how we had to really work very differently and how we had to pivot And our best example would be, we run the country's largest hygiene brand with Lifebuoy. And therefore, I mean, there were days in which in 24 hours, we were working through how we could take our messaging to consumers, talking about, some of the campaigns that in fact one in the Effies, the biggest one being use any soap. And that those were literally things we were rolling out within 24 hours, within days, all without, normal studio time available, agencies not available. Most importantly, the consumer who was in a very different setup versus what you would normally be as a consumer.
And to talk about that campaign in particular, because Lifebuoy's done very well at the Effies, but to use any soap, usually brands such as yourselves and your competitors are not so generous. But what happened there? What was the trigger for you to go all out and say use any soap?
In the end, first you have to go back to the purpose of a brand, Sonali. And I think the purpose of Lifebuoy is very clear, right? It is to really help consumers battle the challenges, the infections, the disease burden that we have, and teach consumers the simple habit of hand washing. So, it honestly was a no-brainer at one level that, this was the need of the hour to tell consumers that in this pandemic, there was one simple thing that all of us could do to help ourselves, and that was to just wash your hands. And, it seemed incredibly obvious, and I can say on hindsight, but it is obvious at that moment, I can tell you, when the country is suffering from a pandemic, to just teach consumers to do hand washing and say, use any soap. And we even named some of our competitors because it was the right thing to do. And I think when you find that right thing to do, it is somehow easy.
HUL, as one of the leading marketers, and one of the biggest FMCG players, constantly looks at consumer trends. But has your consumer trend check kind of gone for a toss with the pandemic? Have new consumer trends come up? And my question is the change in consumer behavior just tentative because of what we are going through and will bounce back to normal once things ease out? Or is there a shift forever?
Sonali, firstly, it's a broad spectrum of shift. Some, I think, very permanent. So let's take, for example, the shift to digital. And just the fact that all of us as consumers suddenly discovered that we had to live life differently when we were indoors, locked away at home. And therefore, those behaviors, some of them are lasting. That's a change forever. That's a shift in consumer behavior. And they discovered sometimes the convenience of, the entire shopping experience, being online, entertainment online. So there are some permanent shifts in terms of OTT, in terms of, media behavior. So absolutely some permanent shifts. I think there were some temporary shifts as well. And the temporary shifts are more, the search for hygiene, sometimes fear, immunity. Not to say that those aren't more important and that consumers aren't thinking and talking about overall well-being and more holistic living. And I think all of us would agree that the pandemic probably made us think again about, holistic well-being, about living life differently. So some permanent shifts, I think, and those are very clear as well. I think some temporary, and they will come back towards original behaviors.
Talking about the beauty and personal care segment in particular, I know I've seen your results. It's done well. It has grown despite the challenges you faced on input cost inflation, subdued consumer interest. But when you talk about beauty and personal care, most of us did not have to really look beautiful over the last 18, 19 months, unless we're doing a Zoom, meeting, which is video on. Most of us didn't spend too much on beauty and beauty items, really. How did you, what was your strategy to kind of push that sector? Because although we were all indoors and there were no real occasions to go out and dress up.
No, so absolutely, Sonali. So there were parts of our discretionary portfolio that did get impacted. And that's absolutely true. Let's take makeup, for example. Yeah. I mean, makeup by nature is a very discretionary portfolio. It's a category, like you say, that, if you're not being social, you're not moving out, I mean, you don't need it as much, right? So absolutely, some of those portfolios got affected. The great thing about HUL is, we have a span of categories, right? Within that, we have our soaps business, we have skin creams. Actually, interestingly, when we were indoors, we actually felt the need for a lot of those skin products. consumers were also going through a lot of stress, tension, and for different reasons. I think the point was about pivoting some of these benefits towards things consumers were experiencing more during this different world in which they were living. And I think the more dynamically we pivoted our portfolio in that direction, and that's the reason we've been able to have a balanced result.
Coming to, a strategy which HUL has taken, and of course you are at the helm of it, which is, with the whole stop the beauty test filter, association with Facebook, or it be removing the word normal from your, your communication. These are big steps, and I know that the Western consumer is a much more evolved consumer, more sophisticated, and so all those movements are very big here. I think we're still some way to go there. Why have you taken that decision for the Indian market when we're still so obsessed with color, looks, height, weight, caste, religion, all of that? I think our evolution is still to come.
When we talked to women and we did a survey amongst women, we found that 9 out of 10 women, when they go in for marriage, actually feel rejected. It affects their self-esteem, and it goes on, it affects them through their life. And I think it'd be fair to say that brands must take on some of these issues and create a movement for this. So I think I feel very proud of the work that we did, not just because, it did well for the brand, but it's absolutely the right thing to do. We tied up with Facebook, like you said, and created the no filter, encouraging consumers to stop these beauty tests. And I have been overwhelmed with the response. Actually, with the campaign, we used the stories of 4 women. These are real women and their stories as they went through this experience during their marriage situation. And such strong, confident women who would be fair to say that do not deserve this unequal test.
I mean, I'm glad, brands such as yourselves are now beginning to take larger stances for society to actually aid to change society. Having said that, I must ask you, as one of the leading marketers, in the recent times, brands have tried to do creative stuff, not particularly objectionable, but we've suddenly got into an era of extreme consumerism, consumer activism, where anything and everything is objectionable, a problem, and there's a boycott movement. We've seen perfectly acceptable ads or campaigns being pulled off. And there is a debate saying whether one should cave in with when, places like Twitter are raving and ranting, or should we hold on to our stance? And I think there is no clear answer to that. What's your take on that?
So, I think there are 2 parts of this story, Sonali. The first is that, when brands come with authenticity behind an idea, it's not just a one-off idea that the brand does, but actually this is their purpose. This is the reason why they exist. And let's take the Dove campaign. This is Dove's purpose across the world, in India, for the last, many, many, many years. So when Dove comes and says, stop the beauty test, it is authentic. It comes from an authentic place. We run across India the Dove Self-Esteem Fund, where we actually go to young women and we encourage them. We build their self-esteem. We have workshops with young women to help, really develop self-esteem. This is content created with psychologists to work with women to help them on their self-esteem. So, when you come together, you have an idea which you're doing authentically, purposefully, handled in the right way. You can do very difficult messaging. I think sometimes brands get it wrong in terms of the tone, or it is one-off, and then there is controversy. I think it's a very individual decision from a brand of whether they choose to pull out or not. I mean, I would not want to comment on that.
Hindustan Unilever has teased an aggressive plan with, your new innovations from your premium beauty portfolio, which is consisting of brands like Simple, Love Beauty, and Planet Baby Dove. Give me a sense of what these offerings will be, and what's the kind of market you see for these products?
So Sonali, absolutely. I think what we are all seeing and witnessing is a very strong sort of market in the top end of the market, as the market, like you rightly said earlier, is premiumizing. And I think what some of these brands have the opportunity to do is to really market differently to this top end consumer, very much digital first, and really with a very different business model versus the much more mass marketing model. And that's really the opportunity. It's great for the country that, the country is segmenting much more. And as Unilever and HUL, we have all the brands in the world which we have at our access, and all the technologies to bring in and serve this consumer. And that's really we're very happy with our initiatives on Simple and Love Beauty Planet, like you said. But really, it's learning ground very early years in the end in the country like India. India is a highly underdeveloped skin and beauty market even today. And the opportunity is just boundless as a result.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. But on that note, thank you so much, Priya. Truly a pleasure. Many, many congratulations again.
Thank you so much, Sonali. It was great to join you.
Well, that was Priya Nair from Hindustan Unilever, Client of the Year at Effies 2021. We're taking a short break, but coming up is the Agency of the Year at the Effies. That's McCann Worldgroup. And we're going to be talking to the man who steers this ship. That's none other than Prasoon Joshi. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The show's called Brand Equity, and I'm Sonali Krishna. Now, the Agency of the Year went to none other than McCann, believe it or not, for the fourth time in a row. Well, let's meet the man who navigates this champion agency, Prasoon Joshi, Chairman, McCann Worldgroup Asia Pacific, CEO and CCO, McCann Worldgroup India, and how he manages the stall feet year after year. Well, thank you so much for joining us right here, Prasoon, on Brand Equity. And first up, many, many congratulations for yet another stellar win at the Effies. I must ask you about, the last year and a half or so, and the kind of work you created, for your clients through the last 18, 19 months. How different was your communication given the environment we were in, how sensitive it was? We went through some really dark times. How different, was it to create effective communication to actually reach the audience this time around?
It was a challenge, I would say, and it was a challenge which was unprecedented. We hadn't seen a situation like this, a sentiment like that, consumer sentiment, which was very different. And our clients as well as us, we were, figuring out what is the communication. So a lot of clients started feeling whether they at all need to communicate at that time. A responsible brand should not stop communicating. It's a time you should communicate. So unlike many people who believe that whether the client should communicate, my advice to all my clients was that you must communicate. And you must communicate very sensitively. You should communicate your core brand philosophy, which you find difficult in the times, where a lot of promotional activities are happening, a lot of here and now is happening, short-term goals are taking over the long-term philosophy. I think this is the time to communicate that. So that was one thing I told very clearly to all my clients, that this is also, the audience is very vulnerable. Let's not forget, at the vulnerable time, people register what you say. So you have to be very cautious of what you're saying. When you are vulnerable, when you are going through tough times, what people say to you, they have a long-term impact on your head. And I see, I never see, too much of jargons. I never use, as you know me. I simply look at people. I see relationships, people. How we behave with each other is how a brand should behave with people. There is always a human side to a brand. What is a brand eventually? One is a physical product and one is a narrative. What are you and me as people? One is our physical body and another is a narrative. So exactly like that. So your narrative should be very, very carefully protected. And that's where I think a certain communication, which I advise, be it, a work on Dettol, which we did for Reckitt, or BMGF, our work on Nestle, our work we've seen, and a lot of new clients like, Unacademy, OLX, you saw a lot of, those winning there.
I want to talk to you about the one campaign which you won a gold for, which is using virality to fight the virus for Dettol. Talk to me about this campaign and why do you think, it went as viral as it did?
First of all, people were quite intrigued. What is the, when we're talking about wash your hands often, and there was a lot of inquisitiveness in people about, and so we simplified how to wash hands. And we did short videos where everybody did their own version. We made it almost fun to, wash your hands, something which is a very laborious activity. You start looking forward to washing your hands, whether kids doing it, whether celebrities doing it, various people started doing their own version of, but we simplified it in a song way, in a songified way, in a very tongue-in-cheek way, and which caught on the attention of people and got viral, which also at this time, hit the spot where people were looking for what, and we did it with a lot of sort of pithy communication, not something which is laborious.
Prasoon, these days I want to talk to you about two things that we're seeing as trends. One is we are seeing a lot of brands give out social messages, be larger than the product itself and talk about that, and not really focus so much on features of the product. Do you think this is a good practice by, zooming out the product and looking at some master values? Or do you think it's taking away from the actual job of advertising, which is selling?
I never confuse that, so I think both are very important. As I said that your social purpose of a brand is always very important. It's just that it's important when you dial it up, when you communicate that. Of course, your functionality will always stay important. You would need to functionally tell people what is the real usage of your product, what is that you're bringing into their lives. But at the same time, as I said, a brand is a narrative. So a narrative also has a conceptual role to play in people's life. I think a brand which does not stand on values, a brand who does not stay on larger goals, on larger human good, whether you communicate it very often or not, that's your decision. But if you do not have those values in any big brand, and I have been working on all my clients who are, these winners, all these, whether it's MasterCard, whether it's, you've seen Nestle, Reckitt, all the clients which we have won, on Cigna we have won on. And I think everywhere I've seen, there is a certain philosophy they have. And it is your decision when you want to communicate that. But if you ask any, and especially in the times when everything is so many things are variable around, so many variables around you, you're actually, if you see consumer sentiment and consumer psychology, they are actually looking out for something which is more stable, where they can anchor. Everything is changing around you. Things are so, then you want to hang on in relationships, in brands. You want to hold on to something which you believe, which has certain value system there. So in these times, I think the brands which have performed very well are also the brand where people have certain connection and faith.
The other trend that we're all witnessing, and I'm sure it's disturbing for clients and agencies, and you have been in the advertising world, you've seen it all, you're a veteran. But what would you say? Should our brands right in reacting to negative sentiment on places like Twitter, or if they believe in their concept, then should they stick with their guns?
I believe that nothing should be surface skimming, first of all. I believe in brands creating waves, not trying to ride waves. Okay, it's very important. And it should be true to the brand's purpose. If it is true to the brand's purpose, it's not that it is, somehow being opportunistic. There's some wave is there, I just ride that. But if you believe in something, if it is part of your brand philosophy, then you should stick to it. Today, we are living in times where democratization of platforms have happened. So in these times, only thing which should be followed is authenticity and staying true to your values and your core. as far as you stay true to that, as far as you are not being here and now, as you are not being opportunistic, you have a long way to go. I think we will see through this because, consumer, though might be speaking aloud and expressing themselves, also they know they can see through also where the truth is. So I think if you stick to that, you stick to your value system, I think you will go a long way.
Last question before I let you go. It has been particularly tough for all industries the last 18, 19 months. And hence, the advertising world has also suffered considerably. How would you define business for the advertising world in the last 18, 19 months? And what is your future outlook for the industry?
I can't say I'm happy about the crisis, but there has been a huge amount of learning for us in this crisis. And I think the ones where the relationships were good and deep have all been, we've seen this crisis through, better in where the relationships were good. So it has been all about relationships.
Thank you so much, Prasoon, for your time. Many, many congratulations once again for being Agency of the Year. And as usual, lovely speaking with you.